And delighted to welcome to the podcast Communications Manager with Matchbook, as well as the host of Matchbook's Betting Podcast, which was voted Best Betting Podcast, not just 2020 this year, but also 2019. So Aidan O'Sullivan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Daniel, really good. Delighted to be on. A big fan of what you guys are doing so far. You're taking off. It's great to see.
Appreciate that. Listen, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself for those that don't know how you kind of got involved with Matchbook to start with and your background in betting.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story how I got there, but originally I would have worked with Cashman's Bookmakers, which was an independent bookmakers in Cork City. I kind of worked with those guys during college and whatnot, a bit of an part-time basis, then kind of went full-time post-college, working their head office in Mailer Street in Cork, doing a lot of odds compiling local stuff. I suppose back then with Cashman's, I don't want to show my age here too much. We weren't even online. It was very much kind of, pen and paper kind of stuff, which is great. You got to learn definitely from the ground floor up. And thereafter, I left Cashman's in 2007. Definitely giving my age away now.
Yeah, giving it away there.
Trading with Paddy, give it away. So with 2007, I left Cashman's to go to Paddy Powers. It was 2007, 2008, that general kind of mark anyway. And I was a US sports trader with Powers, which, as you can imagine, involved a lot of late nights, but a whole lot of fun. Great experience with Powers, did 2 or 3 years there, and then left the industry, which I still kind of regret, but I went back in. I left the industry to take over the family business, which was a taxi company down in Cork, and sold that back up in October 2016. I'm back with Matchbook, so I've kind of gone the long way around at it again, but no, it's a fantastic industry to be working in my current position.
Tell us a little bit about then the Matchbook podcast when you came in and how that's taken off over the last couple of years, particularly focused on the NFL side of things.
Yes, so when I came in, I kind of got involved in the social media side of things with Matchbook. So like I said previously, my background was trading, but I was lucky enough to kind of maybe use that to my advantage and get into the marketing team at Matchbook. And at the very start, the Matchbook Betting Podcast was a once-a-week broadcast. Emma Kennedy of the Final Furlong podcast was hosting it back then. And what would happen is you would have, 3 different sports that was covered over this, the space of an hour and a half once a week. Thereafter, we decided to kind of, go a different direction with it and make them more sports specific. So the NFL would be a standalone podcast, same with the racing, same with the football. I took over thereafter from Emmett, and yeah, it's been great ever since. And, we've kind of evolved the podcast into more of a kind of a live betting show that goes out on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And obviously we're still involved with the podcast as well. It's great for us in a sense because, viewers can get more engaged with the content. They can kind of get their questions in for our guests if they have, a question on what team to back at the weekend or anything else they want to ask, even just general betting advice. They can get those questions in during the live broadcast, which I think has just been great for the engagement. And, it's been great. I mean, those 2 awards that you mentioned at the top of the show there, I mean, generally speaking, with the betting industry with awards, it's kind of one of those, you have to buy a table, you pay 10 grand for a table at one of these events and you get an award. But the fantastic thing about the Smart Betting Club's awards is that it was all online. So it was very much, anyone could have voted for it. Now, probably my grandmother probably voted for it once or twice. I won't lie. I probably did get a few people involved in that kind of sense. But it really did kind of get us out to the kind of masses. And it was, I love those kind of polls. And I know I'm going to say that, given that we won the award. But to me, they're the real awards. We're just the ordinary Joe punter can, vote. And it was just great for us. And look, it's never a bad thing when we beat our opposition too. So that's never a bad thing.
Brilliant stuff. So listen, with your starting off with Paddy Power and you would have been US sports odds compiler, it obviously means you were a fan of at the NFL. Yeah. So take us back to a little bit for those that are listening that aren't too familiar with the NFL. How did you first get involved with kind of watching NFL to start with, and then how does that continued on?
It's just such a random thing, Daniel. I mean, I think it was about 11 years of age when I watched my first game, and I'll be honest, even as a child, I was just an absolute sports nut. Absolutely bugging my mother to hell to get Sky Sports around this is going to show my age again, around the time of the second Eubank and Collins fight in Park Equiva, which I think was 1995, so that would have maybe about 12 or 13. And it was around that time that Channel 4 were covering the NFL on Sundays. This was obviously before Sky Sports had it. And I just sat down one Sunday afternoon. I was watching the Jets and the Dolphins in Miami. And it might sound a bit flippant to say it, but it was just fell in love with the sport, just watching over it. And kind of to myself thereafter, I said, whoever wins this game, they're going to be my team. I had such a real bad luck there. I mean, the Dolphins and the Jets, they haven't done anything since. The Jets won that game, so I've been a Jets fan since and been lucky enough to head to New York/New Jersey for a couple of games too. But it's just that easy. And I think everyone's got a different story. Definitely in the British Isles, it's been a sport that has absolutely taken off to a major degree. And the amount of people that I meet at different NFL games or events, and they've got into different avenues. Some people would have gone on holidays. I know yourself, you were doing a J1 in San Diego, and you're a Chargers fan the back of that. And people playing things like Madden on the PlayStation or PlayStation 2 back in the day. It's just amazing. And, definitely nowadays, I know we probably get to this in a bit, the fact that the Redzone is on Sky Sports Mix, and so even if you don't have a sports subscription, you can watch it free to air. It's just amazing. And it's definitely helped the game grow to a larger audience.
Well, yeah, let's move on to Redzone, because Redzone was a big part. What I supported the Chargers, I was kind of a little bit different. Well, firstly, little did we know that the Jets and Dolphins in that game, the amount that was riding on it, to be honest with you, I can't let it go without having to think. Things could have been so different. You could have been supporting one of the other worst teams in the division.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, look, I think, you'll see this with a lot of sports the last couple of years. And I know yourself, you'll see it around Dublin and Cork and different places. When the Super Bowl comes around, you will see a lot of Pats jerseys, because they're there almost every second year at least. And all these kind of fans or whatever, and I'm going to say that kind of flippantly, it's very easy to support the teams that are winning all the time. But to be a Jets fan, and you know this, to be a Chargers fan, it's tough going, but it's almost kind of self-fulfilling even this season. As a Jets fan, going down 21-0 to Buffalo on Sunday night, I've just given up in the season already, which is good, because my hopes have never risen. So I'm literally at a plateau here of just expecting disappointment. So I'm comfortable with that right now.
Yeah, and I'm the opposite, where Chargers always get off to a terrible start, and we're 1-0 now, and all of a sudden it's like maybe Phil Rivers was the problem after all. I remember saying this to you a bit, and you just shook the head.
Yeah.
But a little bit then on Redzone. So, while I was supporting Chargers, I wasn't that into the sport, I guess. I suppose it took Redzone one day and just sitting watching Redzone, and after an hour going, this is unreal. Next thing, it's 7 hours later and it's 1 a.m. and I'm due in work in 5 or 6 hours. It's like, this is a terrible idea. But when they mean 7 hours of commercial-free TV, it means you literally can't move from the sofa, because you're going to miss some action. Tell us a little bit about Redzone itself for those that aren't aware. I guess it's the Gillette Soccer Saturday of American football, only bigger and better.
Times 1,000. I think close to electricity and indoor plumbing, Redzone has been the best invention for mankind ever. Of course, I'm speaking to the general NFL masses there, but it's just an amazing viewing experience. And you touched on it there. I mean, we can use kind of live pause on Sky with different sports or whatever else. Even just a single NFL game, as we're well aware, they do tend to take about 3 hours, and there are a lot of stoppages. But with Redzone, especially in the 6 o'clock games, you have like 8 or 9 games kicking off at the one time. And the fantastic thing about American football is that it's pretty strategic, a bit like chess, that, you're kind of moving in different stages. Yes, there's explosive plays that can go bang. You can get a score from 70 or 80 yards, but it can be choreographed really well by the producers at the NFL Network, who, say, okay, there's action in this game, let's go to this. And, you can watch 3 games at the one time. Sometimes they have 5 games up at the same time. If there's action going, you do not miss a single thing. And I think they've tried to do that with football, with BT on the Champions League, which isn't bad. It's not bad, and they have some really good analysts in studio as well. But for NFL, it's actually the perfect dynamic, the way the game is built and set up for this viewing experience. And, I hear it less nowadays, but you do talk to people, and I tell them what I do. I host this NFL podcast, and they're saying, well, there's actually people in Ireland and the UK that are into the NFL, and they can't get over the amount of people that are. And there's always this kind of maybe this lazy assumption that, yes, it does take 3 hours, and yes, there are a lot of stoppages, but I mean, look, it's a Sunday evening. What else are you doing? And anyway, Redzone, there are no stoppages. Like you said, you look at your watch, you're thinking, geez, where is this time gone? And you literally are afraid to go to the bathroom because you will guarantee you will miss something. You know, it's an amazing viewing experience and something that I think is very unique to the NFL. I think it will be copied elsewhere, maybe, but I can't see how it's going to be replicated in other sports. But yeah, I mean, look, every Sunday from 6 o'clock, it's just go time.
Like, I love the Sunday kind of setup. So there's more games at 6 o'clock. You get all the action. There's a few less games, usually bigger enough games at the 9:30. And then when I was a real brave student, the Monday night football games, I'd stay up. And by then you're so on the ball with American football that you're kind of an absolute expert, and you're getting used to the breaks. It's just like the perfect Sunday. And when you add in the Super Sunday and watching football, you could literally sit on your couch for the best part of 13-14 hours.
We're probably not being great advocates here for people getting exercise and all these kind of things, but yeah, look, I mean, early in the Sunday is the time for your exercise, go for your walks or whatever else, but it is kind of tailored well that way. I mean, Sunday evening, without the NFL, you're probably kind of stuck on maybe the rest of the season, and you've kind of got La Liga on Sunday, you've got your US golf on a Sunday evening, but it ain't the same. And like I said, it's amazing. I can't probably really speak to Dublin. You might be able to speak to this more, but in pre-COVID times on a Sunday evening around Cork City, if you kind of walk into most bars, invariably the NFL is on, which if you thought about this, 5, 10, 15 years ago, you'd think, what the hell is going on here? But it just goes to show that when people do actually sit down and give it a small bit of time and, focus on what is happening rather than just kind of maybe pushing it off and saying, well, it's not really for me, it's American and I don't really understand the rules. But like you say, you just sit down and watch it. You don't belong figuring it's a pretty easy sport to understand and get a handle on.
And I definitely think the commentators watching it, within half an hour, you've already formed your own opinion on whether it's a foul or not based on what they said. Yeah. So I think the analysis is very good. But for those that, have tried it before, maybe similar to myself a few years ago, and in the too many breaks side of things, maybe give us a little bit of an insight into the actual sport itself. So, people are aware, they see like the first down, second down, third down, just a little bit about that chess game moves that you were talking about there.
Yeah, it's just strategic. There's a great strategic element in this sport, in the sense that, fundamentally you've got to get 10 yards to stay on the field, and you get 3 goals to get that. You can take the fourth one, but if you lose in the fourth one, you lose possession to be flipped over. I'll be honest, I could probably spend an hour on this, and maybe it might not make sense. There are tons of really great YouTube videos out there that, that people will explain it within 5 or 6 minutes, and you will have a fantastic grasp of what the actual rules are in the sport. I think people may get a bit bogged down in that too much about the first down and the yardage and everything else. But if you actually just as a visual perspective, you just sit down and watch a couple of games with even a snippet of that, and just, you're going to see you're like 2nd and 3. You're thinking, okay, it's a second attempt, 3 yards, and then you'll quickly figure it out. They lose 2 yards, it's 3rd and 5. So I'm after quantifying that in my head. I'm after understanding what that is. And yes, when I see them get over that yellow visual line that's on the TV that the TV channels have, you pretty much know, okay, it's 1st and 10 again. So it's not exceptionally difficult to begin with. I think if you look at other sports, I mean, the likes of baseball and maybe cricket and others, they're way more complicated than that. And even they're not that complicated. But again, I just think people probably just need to commit an hour or two to Redzone. Let's be honest about it. I would stake my reputation and good money on the fact that anybody sitting down and watching Redzone, and I've had so many colleagues of mine in Matchbook, and it's amazing even the last 2 or 3 years that all of us having started playing fantasy football, and we're in different leagues, and the amount of guys that will just sit down and are actually looking forward to Sunday evening though, who would have had zero interest, and who probably would have been the scoffing kind of type saying, oh, what are you interested in American football for? We live in Cork or whatever, and it's just they have totally changed their mind frame and their point of opinion on this. And just things like Redzone, I'm sorry, there's no way you can sit down that as any bit of a sports fan or even just a general entertainment fan and not be blown away by the spectacle that it is each and every Sunday. Even in Redzone, there's going to be a couple of bad games, but you'll always find some bit of action and drama. And one of the great things I find about NFL is teams are never out of it. And I know you can say this for any sport, that even a football team that are 3-0 down, or a GA team that is 10 points down, and hurling especially, or whatever, are in it, but they're not really a lot of the time. In NFL, freaky stuff can happen, and we've seen these, you know. I think you've been in the same situation where we're counting our money on the backs of winning some accolade on one team, and all of a sudden it's gone. Yeah. It's beautiful feeling.
Well, like, talk a little bit more of those comebacks, because what comes to mind most is the Patriots in the Super Bowl a few years back, and that would have had the highest audience. But it isn't as unlikely as a 3-0 lead in football. I guess it's the way American football is almost designed to be that last minute drama, and I guess having these big comebacks adds to the appeal of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I mean, you can see it in teams, and I know this one is probably overplayed in some sports, but momentum in this sport especially seems to be just kind of a quantifiable edge. You can see kind of guys get energized and whatever else. And I know that's probably a bit narrative-y, but you could really see teams just panicking. And the team that have been well ahead then start playing with a straitjacket, and they just start running the ball. They get conservative with their play calling. They're not aggressive. And you alluded to it there. The Atlanta Falcons being 28-3 up in that Super Bowl 3 years ago was the prime example of a team that just wanted to burn clock. What I mean by burning clock, you just run the ball so the clock keeps on ticking. And, you know, they got caught out in a major way. The Patriots got 1 or 2 scores, and everything, and the inexperienced team start worrying. The experienced team with Tom Brady, quarterback, says we can do this. We believe we can do this. And then the other team are just scared shitless, essentially, and it can just change in a microsecond. I mean, I know there were so many people and so many sharp bettors I know that were on Atlanta +3 that night, +3.5. I must admit, I was on the other side. It was probably one of the biggest getaways I ever got away with. But
I was exact same. I was on -3, and then I was like, look, or -3.5, whatever the final line was, and I was like, yeah, look, it's not. Patriots might win at 3 or something, might get my money back. The fact they actually won it by 6, it gives you an idea how crazy the sport is.
Even in overtime, I mean, like you said, if you're on -3, we're good and glad of getting your money back, even if they kick that field goal in overtime. But you know, when James White went in to score that rushing touchdown, it's a roller coaster of emotions in that sense. And don't get me wrong, I mean, you can probably make that comparison with a lot of different sports, you know, but I think it's definitely more prevalent in the NFL that you do have. I mean, even just this Sunday, for example, Detroit were something like 20-odd points up with, you know, 7 or 8 minutes to go. I think they had like a 99.5% chance of winning, and the Bears put it out. I mean, that's only just week one. Yeah, it's week one. So there's a whole lot more of these to come throughout the season. And like I said, you know, you're on Redzone there in Sky Sports Mix, and you don't miss a second of that. They kind of zone in on the games that something is on the line, whereas if there's a blowout game, you just don't see that, which is great. That is literally what you want as a viewer. You know, you don't want to be saying, okay, team is winning by 30 points and there is no hope of a comeback in the last quarter. You don't want to be watching meaningless plays. You want to get straight to the action. I feel it, by the way, this is like some sort of advertisement for Sky Sports. But
specifically Sky Sports Mix.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like you cannot speak highly enough of Redzone. So I think hopefully we're getting our point across to the listeners. Just go watch it. I think it pretty much will sell itself for you. We don't really have to sell it too much thereafter.
Yeah, and I suppose the best thing as the season progresses, so you have your 16 weeks of Redzone, and then we move on to the playoffs. I guess, you know, that's, you know, when maybe the bandwagon starts coming in onto American football. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think, again, the sport has it right where you have all the drama of Redzone, but then this is the real football here. This is knockout football, and you're going to sit down for 3 or 4 hours and watch this game, whether you like it or not.
That's it. Yeah, Redzone's taken away. So like you said, we have the 17 weeks of the regular season, and thereafter we get into wildcard playoffs. It's going to be even more interesting this year because we have an extra playoff team in the AFC and the NFC, so that's going to add a bit more spice. And yes, you know, it's not like a league table with the Premier League where, you know, the top team finishes first. The top team in both conferences, the AFC, NFC, they're divided 16 teams each, and they will get home advantage throughout the playoffs. They have to play less games, and they will have the home advantage, which ordinarily is good. But this year, obviously, we know that there's, you know, far less fans, if at all, probably throughout the season, and it's not going to be as advantageous as it used to be. But definitely, you know, we've seen it down through the years where the team that comes in at 5 or 6 in the seeding can just get hot, gets those extra games. They don't have any bye week like the first and the second team have had, and they just get hot. They get that thing we call previous momentum, and they just kind of go on to win it. Like Baltimore Ravens, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, beating San Francisco that time would have been probably the last example of that. But there's been plenty more examples down through the years where a team might just sneak in the back door with a 9-7 record or 10-6, and just does the business from there. And it's just fascinating to watch. I mean, but you're right. I suppose we kind of get spoiled for 17 weeks of Redzone, but then we kind of have to focus on one game, which is okay too. But it's going to be a fun season ahead. And let's be honest about it, during what we've had to deal with this year, we're probably pretty lucky that we have NFL at all. So long may it last.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of that opinion with sport being back. Would people listening to this and would be familiar with the Premier League and the transfer market, I want to speak a little bit about draft, because you look at the odds of the NFL Super Bowl and like it's 5-1 the field, for example, where the Premier League it would be 2 realistic, possibly 3 this year.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit how exactly the draft works. Again, I think a lot of people kind of like, oh, draft is just it's so simple in other sports, but it's a pretty kind of easy thing to concept, and then there's obviously the draft every year.
Yeah, it's a good concept. First of all, just to kind of paraphrase into this, there is a salary cap within the NFL, so teams only get so much to spend. I think the salary cap, you'll see it even in other sports now, that it is becoming way more prevalent, but it's very rigid in the sense that, you compare it to US sports like, baseball, especially, where the big teams like the Yankees and a few others and the Red Sox, they have big budgets because they've, their owners are multi-billionaires, so to speak. With the NFL, you do obviously have multi-billionaire owners as well, but they do have to stay within the salary cap. And generally how it works, you've got college football where players have to play at least 3 years at a college school, which obviously we could do a whole podcast about college football some other time. That's a massive sport in itself. The best player there will generally be picked first in the draft the next year, and the worst team with the worst record of 32 teams will have the first pick more often than not. So it does add to, hopefully, a bit of parity within the NFL. However, you do look back over the last 10 years and the Cleveland Browns have had a pick in the top 3 for probably 8 of those picks or 8 of those years, and they're still pretty shit. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always translate there. And you see the New England Patriots, we touched on them earlier. I mean, they're never going to be picking number 1 when Bill Belichick is coaching, even with Tom Brady's exit. But it just goes to show a really good culture, a really good franchise, good coaching setup, good facilities, everything that the right ethos, everything that's done right does actually matter. There's no turnover in head coaches like there is in Cleveland. So, but the draft in itself, it's done, every April or May, now in different cities, and it's a bit of a crapshoot. But there's been some horrific picks down through the years where teams just get it wrong. And they pick too high. They take a player that they could have taken in the second round, the first round. So that in itself is actually great entertainment. And this year, actually, at Matchbook, we did a kind of a draft special, because you have to remember at the time when the draft was on in May, it was all done remote. Obviously, with the teams, normally they would be the year before they had it in Nashville, and it was a big event down there. But we actually did a whole betting podcast on it, because at that time, sports-wise, there was literally the Bundesliga was on. There may have been some Australian rugby league or something like that, but there was absolutely nothing else, bar the odd horse racing over in America and stuff. And it was just, we saw, even just from a betting perspective, the handle, people were just staying up all night watching on it, betting on it, because it was just drama. It was unscripted drama. Nobody knew where to go with it. And it's great in that sense. But yeah, look, the draft in itself does hopefully give parity to the league. And you're right. Look, there are top teams there, but if you look at the betting even on the outright market at the start of the season, you are invariably looking at the favourite being 6 or 7 to 1, whereas as you alluded to, the top, Manchester City or Liverpool, that they're going to be fairly short. And we can make this case about numbers of sports, where there's only going to be so many teams can ever win. We can even use in this country in the GAA, where there's only going to be so many football teams win the All-Ireland, and same with the hurling. But with the NFL, there's definitely more of a chance of a team coming from nowhere and then just getting hot at the right time, and just everything aligning with them, with free agency signing, with the draft, and with different areas. And yeah, it just leads to a better spectacle throughout the season.
Yeah, and I guess on that point, like that draft number 1 pick can make a massive difference to a team. Like you mentioned GA there. I want to touch on that for a sec because I'd be a massive Dub fan. I wanted anything to win in All Ireland. I think the last time we'd won the All Ireland before 11, I was just born, so I didn't count it. And then we won it. And then we
95 was it?
95, yes, against Tyrone, So then, like 13 came along was great, and I liked us doing the 5 in a row last year. But again, that 3rd and 4th in a row, I was not sick of it's the wrong word, but I was a bit kind of like, geez, we need sport. You get into sport because the drama and the excitement, and when Dublin are only playing 1 or 2 games a year, they're going to be close games. Where I feel like America.
Don't make me play the violin here, buddy. Don't make me, like Cork haven't won a football Ireland since 2010 now, so don't be making me like, oh, it gets so boring. Jeez, I would love any kind of an Ireland in this county, like,
Yeah, well, a lot of Cork fans still think it's 1990, but that's another debate entirely. Like
30-year anniversary this year, man. I'm definitely showing my age when I can definitely remember being inside in Patrick Street when the 2 teams came back to celebrate them. So yeah. Bygone years, but
like, I'm not saying I'm bored with winning, but like you love the drama of it, and the Dublin Mayo games are great. But American football has that every week. Like Patriots, even when they're dominating, weren't blowing teams out of the water every week. Obviously certain amount of teams, but I guess that's what American football has right with this the draft picks, and obviously you can't carry that into GA and like soccer. But football's and soccer gone that way, where the likes of City and PSG and the money teams. I guess American football, the salary cap, the draft picks, it just keeps it all interesting, keeps that ball rolling.
It does, yeah. And I mean, look, what we've seen the last couple of years with football, the financial fair play rules. But I mean, realistically,
look at the City court case.
Yeah, exactly. They can still spend copious amounts of money and just huge amounts, and there is no major level playing field. And look, that's the way football has become. There are just massive TV deals where the teams, get that, and then you get those private owners that come in from Qatar and wherever else, and Abu Dhabi with Manchester City and PSG, as you say, and it's very hard to. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, look, I really enjoyed the Champions League this past postseason where it was, in Lisbon, and it was great and everything. But look, even Bayern Munich in Germany are an absolute machine as well. I mean, they're just a commercial mammoth. They're just, even what they won 8 Bundesliga titles in a row. I mean, look, the Patriots, will never win 8. It just won't happen in the Super Bowl. Not gonna, or sorry, in American football in general. You just can't see it ever happening, which is great, because, year on year, you just don't know where it's going. And I think this year especially is fascinating. If you just look up and down the NFC and the AFC, you can make a case for 6 or 7 teams in both conferences that you could say, okay, I think they have a chance to make the playoffs. And then you could kind of talk yourself into them getting to the Super Bowl. And we're only through week 1 now, and you don't want to overreact to events that happened in the opening week, because a lot can change even week on week with the NFL. And that's another thing with the NFL. If you think you have this game sussed, if you think, you get enamored by watching a team through week 1 to 3 and they're, hitting the lights out and scoring points for fun, their defense is great, then it's just, they could be like a 13-point favorite at home to some team and just lose, and you're like, I just can't make out this game, So I mean, anybody who thinks that they have this sport figured out, and I think that's probably one of the intriguing things about the sport in general, is that just when you think that you've got a proper handle on this, it can just come up and bite you in the ass, and you're just like, what is this about,
Yeah, well, actually, just on a point there, you mentioned this season, Tom Brady's move is a bit like he's Lionel Messi of American football. I guess Lionel Messi was looking at Manchester. He was looking at Manchester City as opposed to Aston Villa. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's that kind of, and I guess that makes it like, I couldn't believe the move, because again, I'm still thinking Premier League, but then these things are a lot more prevalent in American football, which makes it competitive and more exciting. Like seeing how Tom Brady obviously didn't have a great start, but
I think, look, it's a good comparison to use there. Look, he's 42. I suppose it's a bit different with quarterbacks there. I mean, when you look at Brady's regime and how he kind of, keeps himself looking like a younger, 30-year-old, and, he basically is kind of a freak in that sense. And once they kind of protect him, that offensive line with the Bucs, which is no guarantee, he should be fine. But yeah, it was kind of a party in the ways in the offseason. I mean, Brady's first game, I think, was back in 2001 against the Jets when Drew Bledsoe got injured. Jets actually won that game, which feels like that was the last time they beat the Pats. But, it just seems so long. You know, you see, it's a very like Messi with Barcelona. You see one player in that jersey, and it's very hard to even, you know, even Sunday night watching him run out for the Bucks against New Orleans. I mean, it's just kind of a strange feeling, you know, even to see it. As a Jets fan, with the Pats being in the Jets division, I was good and glad to see it, of course. But yeah, like, I mean, even on Brady, I don't think that's a slam dunk to actually work either. The Bucks. I don't want to be the guy who says it, but I think he could be potentially done. And again, week one overreactions for you, but I've been thinking this for the last 2 years with the Patriots. He's struggling to kind of get the ball down the field. And hey, you're 42. You're still 42, no matter how well you look after yourself. You know, he has had a couple of injuries in the last couple of seasons too that maybe have slowed him. But it wouldn't be the first time he's made me eat my words. So, you know,
I was going to say, it's very, very brave stuff writing off Tom Brady. I don't care what age he is.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I just do believe, from watching the Bucks and watching their head coach Arians the last couple of years, no, he may be adjusted his game plan, but it is a very vertical offense. And what I mean by that is that, you know, it takes a while for the receivers to get down the field, and you know, that means that Brady's going to have more pressure on him with defenses running. And it's not a quick offense. It's not quick outs, what's called a West Coast offense, where, you know, the ball is thrown 3 yards for the receiver to get another 3 or 4 yards. This is kind of, you know, players running down the field 20 yards. So by the time they get there, he's got to be ready. And the arm has got to be strong enough to get the ball down the field. So, yeah, I think there's a whole lot of question marks. But again, who am I to write off Tom Brady? He's only got 6 Super Bowl rings. So, you know, it's a dangerous game.
And on that subject of quarterbacks, because I think for people outside, and me starting off again, getting into American football, but you even pick teams like, I love the Ravens, but it's purely, I know it's the whole package, but it's Lamar Jackson and the way he plays the game. And I understand it's all been built around Lamar Jackson, so he can stand out and sell himself to the likes of myself. But they're like my second team. I love watching the Ravens. I couldn't believe they got beaten last year. I was shocked, to be honest with you. I still am recovering from it. But, you know, give that sense of how important the quarterback is, because it's everything, isn't it? It's the whole team.
Yeah, absolutely everything. You know, they're more important to CEO. They're the face of the franchise. They're the commercial, you know, they're the commercial elephant there. They're just everything with a franchise. And I mean, look, I mean, teams have got it so wrong in the past. And if you pick the wrong quarterback, or if the quarterback doesn't pan out in any kind of way, it can set your franchise back 3, 4, 5 years. And it's just, they're not that easy to pick up. I mean, you look at, you know, there's 32 teams, and even, you know, there's not 32 good quarterbacks. You know, that is a fact. And that will tell you, even no matter how many people have played the game in college in that position, you know, it's hard to hit on a good one, you know. And even the backups in the league, there's some, you know, brutal ones that, you know, I can even remember playing in college, and obviously I won't name them, but even at college level, and they weren't that great. So you're kind of thinking to yourself, how did these guys get a gig? We definitely won't go into Colin Kaepernick thing, because I think that's been done wholesale. But even to be fair to that guy, I mean, you know, he's definitely a lot better than, you know, maybe half of the backups in the league. Maybe not half, but definitely maybe 30% of them at least. You know, even a Kaepernick who obviously isn't the same quarterback as he was 6-7 years ago with the 49ers, but, you know, he's still got an arm, he's still got legs. So, you know, but again, I think there's been plenty of other podcasts on Kaepernick. I think anyone who doesn't even follow the NFL will know how that goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like to your original question, yeah, the quarterback is absolute king, CEO, head man, and, you know, but the great thing, Lamar Jackson is actually a really good example of this, because I watched Jackson play with Louisville in college, and he's throwing motion, like, to watch it, you're thinking, there's no way this guy, you know, makes it in the NFL. But he's just, he has obviously improved that immensely with, you know, professional coaching with Baltimore, but it's the running game. It just adds a dimension. And he's an example of, if somebody wants to just put in Lamar Jackson into YouTube and see his highlight reels, it's different gravy. You know, he's basically the Michael Vick of our current era, but he's just way better than Vick, because he's just bigger, you know, and he's faster, and he can just do more things. And Baltimore, you're right, that just absolutely transformed their offense, going from a quarterback like Joe Flacco, who's a pocket quarterback, who's, you know, 6'6", and he stands there, and don't get me wrong, it worked. They won a Super Bowl with him, but Jackson just opens up a whole playbook and just kind of revitalizes a franchise and just gets people involved. And yeah, he's must-see TV, as you said.
Yeah, and for those who haven't watched it, it's a bit. I always find it's a bit like having another running back as well as a quarterback watching them. It's just amazing. It's like I'd never seen anything like it watching. Like, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, and you can do so much of that offense too. Like you said, you're protecting the running game so much. You might have 2 running backs in the backfield with him, so that means you've got 3 running backs. You still got all your wide receivers, so you can throw as well. So you've only got 11 defensive players. You're thinking, geez, what am I going to do? Or what is it? A run? Is it a pass? And they've adapted so many. I won't get too schematic on this, but they've adapted so many schemes from the college game, like the run option in different areas where, generally speaking, in the past, teams would have gone up to the offensive teams would get called in one play from their offense coordinator, but these guys are getting 2 or 3 plays each time now. So when they get in there, they look at the defense, they can change it up. So it's very much advantageous to the offenses. And look, it's great for the sport, because I definitely think that offenses, and we even saw it in week 1 this season. I think it's a trend that's going to continue. Offense is king right now, and defenses are just trying to keep the score down. Like even the Chiefs last year winning the Super Bowl. I mean, that defense, and I said it all throughout the season, that defense only has to be average for the Chiefs to win, a game, not only just a game, but the Super Bowl in general, because their offense absolutely lights out, and they just needed a defense who would get a few stops. Didn't have to be anything like the 85 Bears or whatnot. It just needed to be just okay. That's all it needed to be.
And for those that, before we move on to your pick for a Super Bowl, for those that want to get into a little bit of, we mentioned Redzone at the top of the show, and a little bit of maybe having a 5-euro accumulator. How did you kind of get into it? Because you were odds compiling, so I guess you've gone from one side of the fence to the other side. Would you still have your stupid accumulator on a Redzone game?
And of course you do. You have to. You have to do. Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not. I mean, the NFL podcast we have, there's probably guys on that are probably more serious bettors than I am. I'll be honest, I don't stake big money. I generally just listen to what those guys say and just kind of follow them in the back. You kind of do form your own opinion too, but I mean, look, there's a reason we have these guys on these podcasts, is because they live and breathe and they get it. But yeah, no, I mean, look, generally you would have a couple of ACCAs, and every now and again I probably would do a single. I might just have a bigger bet than I would normally have if I just have a conviction about something. Or again, like the Packers this week on the podcast, that was basically a kind of consensus pick with our 3 guests last Wednesday. So when they're all in agreement on that, I'm kind of like, okay, the ears pick up a bit, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm backing this. So just back the Packers straight up, probably for more of a stake than I would for an ACCA. But look, even with the ACCAs, I mean, especially with Redzone, just from an entertainment perspective, you're always involved. You're always going to see the games. It's not like a channel hopping situation where there's different games the one time you're checking your phone. You don't miss a thing. You don't even need to check your phone. Everything's going to be there in front of you, for your bet. It just adds to it. And I know we football accumulators became more popular now with Soccer Saturday and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, I know that's 2 hours of good entertainment from 3 to 5 on a Saturday, but it's nothing compared to Redzone. And again, when we're beating the Redzone drum, but it's nothing compared to it, because you can actually see it rather than having a guy to have to describe you what's going on. You can see it with your own eyes. But yeah, I mean, even a Matchbook as well. I mean, we introduced ACCAs last year, and generally when an exchange, it's only single betting, but we just obviously noticed a massive uptick then on people putting down their ACCAs, and you're getting great value. I mean, you can pick 4 or 5 teams, and you might get an 8-to-1 shot, and that's just a match odds, and you can just have a tenner on that and you win 80 quid, and it's good for a recreational bettor like that, to be able to do that. And obviously on the back end of that, then have the immense viewing experience that is Redzone, and watching, your bets go in or your bets go down, and yourself, Daniel, like we've had some, like, you could have some, you think you're up, and then it's just a last minute kick hits the post or fumble or whatever. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So go on then. So you've got me a bit excited about your Super Bowl pick.
You have to wait till you get excited first of all.
Yeah.
So
for those that want to follow a team that maybe aren't going to support a team, or it's very hard to support a team off the bat, and they just want to maybe throw a couple of quid on a longish shot for the Super Bowl, and maybe keep an eye on the results on a week-to-week basis. Go on then. Give us your and a bit of background.
The one I'm kind of looking at the moment that offers a bit of value. Now I'm going to kind of the thing about it is they're in a really tough division. So it's the Arizona Cardinals. They're in a really tough division. So they're in probably the best division of football, which is the NFC West. They've also got the 49ers, you've got the Rams and the Seahawks. All you could make a pretty good case that they're contenders themselves. There's no bottom feeder there. No, however, in that sense, Arizona the last 2 years, so they brought in this head coach, Cliff Kingsbury from Texas Tech, who, you know, if you watch Texas Tech games in college, they're generally like 40, 58 kind of games. There was just like, their totals, for example, used to go off about 85. So that'll tell you what you're kind of looking at there.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous stuff. So he's kind of brought a lot of that to the NFL with the quick offenses. He has a quarterback there in Kyler Murray who would have played a very similar offense in Oklahoma, which is the Big 12 conference as well in college football, which Texas Tech was in as well. And it just, the high school game and the college game is adapted to exceptionally fast run plays. So there's 35 to 40 seconds generally on a play clock. These guys are getting that play off within 15 to 18 seconds. Where a lot of other teams, you will watch them, I don't want to be picking on, but the Chargers this year will probably be a good example of that, of burning the play clock, because they're not really kind of an offense that is fast. But what Kingsbury has done is brought this offense into Arizona, and he has the perfect driver of the offense in the quarterback, Kyler Murray. So, and again, we don't want to react to week one. They beat the 49ers in San Fran. Again, there's no major home advantage there. San Francisco probably going to have the Super Bowl hangover. You know, the losing team of each Super Bowl tends to just fan out each season. It's very hard to lift yourself again. Arizona's defense looked good. Even when they were down, they kind of held it together, which was always kind of the question mark with them. They've signed DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans, which was an amazing signing. He's probably definitely top 3 receivers in the league. And, you know, 35, 40 to 1 right now, but you can kind of, if you shop around and just go onto odds checker, you should be able to find the best kind of odds there. I just think that represents a lot of value. And added to that, they may not even have to win their division to get into the playoffs, given, you know, there's going to be an extra spot there. I think, yeah, and I think invariably, if you look at the NFC and you look at the NFC West, you could make the case that you'll have 3 teams maybe that will make the playoffs from that. There's going to be definitely at least 2. They have a terrific record in the NFC West for the last couple of years. They don't fear any of those teams in it. And I just think they just have that kind of a feel of a team that may do something. So, yeah, look, I mean, I have been wrong about these in the past. I think my pick last year was Atlanta at this time, so that'll tell you. But, you know, it just kind of seems to me that they have something going, and they're you know, you said about the Baltimore Ravens. You want to start watching Arizona too. They're a really good watch as well. You know, they're just fun watch. Not only that, I just do think they'll win a lot of games. I think they'll win 10 or 11 games, and I see them in the playoffs. And yeah, they're good back from there. I think the way it's shaping up this year is just very interesting. I mean, I think the AFC is probably the stronger conference with Kansas City, Baltimore, and look, you can definitely make a case for New England with Cam Newton there. I think that's a great fit, personally. And yeah, I mean, look, the Chiefs, the Raiders are going to be better this year, you know, so I think that's probably slightly better conference. So at least with Arizona, you're in the other conference. And look, if they've kind of back into a Super Bowl, it's all bets off at that stage. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there, you know, getting the playoffs. But yeah. I do think they're definitely, I do believe they're a playoff team. And once you get in there, as we said previously, once you're in, anything can absolutely happen. It's a brand new tournament thereafter. So yeah, give me the Cardinals at 40 to 1.
I was going to say, I was sold there, and I was getting carried away with you when you were talking about playoffs. We're in the playoffs now, keep going.
We're in the playoffs, yeah, just keep it going. Just 3 more wins, and we left that Vince Lombardi trophy. Yeah, absolutely. No, but look, I think it's that time of the season you can make a case for a lot of teams. I mean, you could go up and down that odds grid there, and you know, you can make a compelling case. But yeah, I just think of the prices, and again, I think they are that big a price because they are in an exceptionally tough division, like I said. But they can beat all of those 3 teams. They play, so with the division, you play your opponents. There's 4 teams in each division. You play them home and away. Other teams, then you play maybe just once a year, different stages. But you know, if you look back through their record in the last 2 or 3 years, they've won in Seattle, they've won in San Francisco as they did this year, and they've won against LA as well. So yeah, give me the Cardinals 40 to 1.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And if you want to, all your favorite backers out there, Ravens for me, nice and safe pick. And how do
is that safe a pick though, mate? Jeez, I mean, like they lost in the playoffs last year, they were 10-point favorite. But yeah,
I know. I'm not getting into that yet. And for those that want more NFL and have enjoyed the chat here, how do people follow the podcast both on Twitter and on podcast form as well?
Yeah, so probably the best place to go is just find Matchbook on Twitter. You can follow us at Team Matchbook, or you can follow the podcast, just the podcast on its own, at Matchbook Pod. We've also got a YouTube channel, which you can find at Team Matchbook. We're also there on Facebook. Those 3 channels, if you want to follow any bit of, betting content, they're all there on that. Everything is posted there. We're also on Instagram, but we can't obviously put our videos there right yet because the Instagram people won't let us live stream. But that's coming. That's coming at some stage, hopefully. So just one more platform. But yeah, every Wednesday, if people are just interested in the NFL, we go live at 4 p.m. Irish time, which just kind of facilitates the guys in the States. We go live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as I mentioned. Weekend football, we do on a Thursday morning. We have some great guests in that as well for the Premier League. And yeah, on Thursday afternoons, we do horse racing. The horse racing isn't every week because some weekends you can have absolute muck horse racing. So we don't want to kind of just get involved in that stuff. But every week, yes, we will always at the NFL on Wednesday afternoons. Podcasts will be out from about 6 p.m. obviously on your preferred podcast app, as you know too well, Daniel. And football, same, should be up by midday on Thursdays. But look, I know there's a lot of competition out there, but it's going to sound like a bit like grandstanding, but there's a reason we've won those awards the last couple of days. Again, we just have terrific guests. It's not even about the host or even what we do. You just have good guests, good crack, good banter, and good viewer engagement. To people get involved. They follow us on our personal accounts on Twitter. They ask us questions there and everything else. So yeah, glad to be part of it and looking forward to the season ahead.
Yeah, and I can just echo that. I've listened to you guys for a long time. Really enjoyed it. So, Aidan O'Sullivan, thanks very much for coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure, Daniel. Thanks, and best of luck with the podcast going forward, man.
Appreciate it.